Hey, peace to everybody listening. So, I wanted to talk about the dream that Peter had in Acts, the 10th chapter, and how it relates to Cornelius, and just talk about what it means on a grander scale. Um, so, I'm just going to get right into it. So, this is Acts chapter 10, verse 9. On the morrow as they went on their journey, drew nigh to the city, Peter went up onto the housetop to pray about the 6th hour, and he became very hungry and would have eaten, but while they made ready, he fell into a trance and saw heaven open and a certain vessel descending onto him, as it had been a great sheet knit at the four corners and let down to the earth, wherein were all manner of four-footed beasts of the earth, wild beasts and creepy things and fowls of the air. And there came a voice to him, Rise, Peter, kill and eat. But Peter said, Not so, Lord, for I have never eaten anything that is common or unclean. When the voice spake unto him again the second time, What God has cleansed, that call not thou common. This was done thrice or three times, and the vessel was received up again unto heaven. And then skip over to verse 28. And he said, This is Peter talking into Cornelius' house. You know how that is an unlawful thing for a man that is a Jew to keep company or come unto one of another nation. But God has shown me that I should not call any man common or unclean. And just going down to 34. Then Peter opened his mouth and said, Of a truth, I perceive that God is no respecter of persons, but in every nation, he that fears him and works righteousness is accepted with him. And so, this dream, kind of in a whole scheme of things, um, it was the opening of repentance to the Gentiles. And who are the Gentiles? They were the foreigners. They were the scattered nation of the northern kingdom. And after the Assyrian Empire, the northern kingdom was scattered to all nations. And you can read that in Ezekiel 36, verse 19, and Psalm 106, 27. But that's that's what the dream is in reference to, the northern kingdom. And that's the key when Christ stated in John the 4th chapter, when he spoke to the woman at the well, he said, Salvation is of the Jews, meaning that Christ came to teach the southern kingdom. And by this dream that Peter had, it opened up the reconciliation for the northern kingdom. And so that's why in Romans 9, the 4th chapter, chapter 9, Romans in the 4th verse, it says, Who are the Israelites? To whom pertain the adoption, the glory, the covenant, the giving of the law, the services of God, the promises. It's saying that these were given to the Israelites when they were one nation. So even though the northern kingdom, they were dismantled and scattered, the covenant was still pertaining to them. And that's why then the dream, it was a metaphorical dream. And but the beasts that Peter saw, they were nations, because the nations are likened unto beasts. And you can read it. That's why Daniel, he had those visions about the beasts. And that's why in Revelation you see the beast is like a chimera, or a mixture of all those beasts that Daniel saw into one, because the nations will really become one under one power to persecute the Most High's people. But that's a different topic. That's kind of deeper than I can get into right now. And also, when the vision, the voice that Peter heard says for Peter to kill and eat, that's another prophecy in Jeremiah 16, where it says that the Most High is going to make fishermen and hunters to track his people. And this is Jeremiah 16:16. Behold, I will send many fishers, says Yahuwah, and they shall fish them, and after will I send them many hunters, and they shall hunt them from every mountain and from every hill and out of the holes of the rocks. Because Peter, it wasn't about eating those unclean food. It was a metaphoric way of saying don't call people unclean, which the Most High called clean. But I say that because in the quote-unquote Christian church, they teach you that Peter had this dream so everybody could start eating pork and lobster. And that's just nonsense. There's nowhere in the scriptures where After Peter had this dream, everybody started eating pork, crab, and shrimp and lobster. The dream is in reference to opening salvation to the Gentiles, meaning to the scatter of the northern kingdom. And even some of the southern kingdom who were uncircumcised from the Greeks during the Greek captivity, the Jews who were Hellenized. Because if you weren't reckoning the genealogies of circumcision, how could you be included in the covenant of circumcision? Because that's what the old covenant was based on. But the new covenant is based on the promise. And that links up with Hebrews chapter 8, verse 8, where it says, for finding fault with them, he says, behold, the days come, says Yahuwah, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah, not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt, because they continue not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, says Yah. For this is the covenant that I will make with the house of Israel after those days, says Yah. I will put my law in their mind and write them in their hearts, and I will be to them a God, and they shall be my people, to me a people. And so this is said, and this just confirms that both covenants, the old and the new covenant, are both for the house of Israel and the house of Judah. And that's where the quote-unquote Christian church gets confounded. But I guess really they don't get confounded. They just promote a lie. That they teach that it's in reference to all people, but it's not. It's in reference to the northern kingdom. And that's why when you read Romans, the 11th chapter, you have the analogy of the good olive tree and the bad olive tree. And the branches, they were plugged into the good olive tree. And those branches are a metaphor of the scattered Israelites, or the scattered of Israel. And once again, Peter's dream emphasizes the four corners of that sheet to represent that Israel was scattered to the four corners of the earth, or all across the planet. And I'm not going to be arrogant to say who is Israel, who's not Israel. You know, I can't say that. That's why the gospel has to be preached to all nations, because Israel scattered through all nations. But I just, this is not for, Christ didn't come to start a new religion. He came to bring the lost sheep back into the fold, meaning he came to bring them back into the covenant, which they broke. But this covenant is not based off circumcision, it's based off his own blood. And, and speaking on religion, there's no religion that the Most High really presides over, because he doesn't reside over religion. He resides over his law, statutes, and commandments. And you can read that throughout the whole Bible. And so that's in that root. It really is just, it's predestined inside of you to know the truth, to find the truth, because not everybody wants to know the truth. Not everybody can handle the truth. But that's what Christ said. No one can come to me unless the Father draws him. And he said that in John chapter 6, I believe 44th verse. And I know this is a very deep topic. Only a few will actually grasp what I'm saying, but hopefully someone got something out of it. All right, so peace.